Hello. Picture this. You are teaching past simple. You set the context. You present the form. You drill. I went. She saw. They bought. Students do the gap fill. Beautiful. Then you move into freer practice. Then you notice students, for example, tell your partner about your weekend. And suddenly you notice students, the past simple disappears. Students start saying, I go shopping, I meet my friend, we eat pizza. You look at the lesson plan and you think, but they got it right 5 minutes ago. That moment is the reason PPP and TBL matter. The order you teach in changes what students pay attention to, what they practice, and what you can honestly say they have learned. So by the end, you will have a simple way to choose between PPP and task-based teaching without turning any uh, these techniques into a methodology war. So here is the quickest diagnostic. PPP asks, how can I prepare students to use this target language? TBLT asks, what language do students need when they try to complete this task? That sounds small, but it changes everything. In PPP, the teacher normally chooses the language first. The lesson builds toward using it. For example, as you know, P, presentation, practice, production. The route is form first and meaning later. In TBLT, the teacher normally chooses the task first. Students try to achieve an outcome, and language becomes something they need. They notice, they repair, and refine. The route is meaning first, form later. So the real difference is not grammar lesson versus speaking lesson. The real difference is where the lesson creates the need for language. So here is the rule. The first stage of a lesson trains attention. If you begin with a form, learners look for that form. If you begin with a task, learners look for ways to express meaning. Let us start with PPP, because it is often the first lesson shape new teachers learn. A classic PPP lesson is clean. First, you present or elicit the target language in a clear context. Maybe, if I were you, I would, for giving advice. Then students practice it in a controlled way, matching halves, drilling, substitutions, gap fills, sentence transformations. Then they produce it more freely, perhaps in a role play where one student has a problem and the other gives advice. That sequence feels safe because it reduces risk. Students are not thrown into communication empty-handed. They don't go, you don't send them to communication and you throw them into the ocean and tell them, okay, start communicating. But instead, they get a model. They get controlled practice. They build accuracy before fluency. And sometimes that is exactly what learners need. If the target language is new or fragile or easy to misform, PPP can give the lesson a clear spine. It helps teachers manage accuracy and helps students notice form. But PPP has one dangerous trap. Controlled success can look like learning. In controlled practice, the lesson is quietly whispering the answer. The page has the target structure. The examples are all the same shape, so students can perform accurately because the situation has been designed to make accuracy likely. That is useful rehearsal, but it is not spontaneous control. When the freer stage arrives, students are no longer choosing between four versions of the same sentence. They are choosing from their whole developing language system. Under time pressure, while trying to mean something, so when students forget the target language in production, they may not be forgetting. They may be showing you that the language has not moved from exercise performance into communicative use yet. This is where TBLT gives us a different kind of evidence. In a task-based lesson, students usually begin with a meaningful problem. Plan the best cure for a phobia, choose the best flatmate, rank solutions to a school problem, design a one-day tour for a visitor. So these are examples. The most important thing is that there is an outcome. Students are not talking simply to practice a grammar point. They are talking because something has to be decided, all right? Solved, designed, ranked, or explained. So a typical task sequence might go like this. Pre-task to prepare the topic, task in pairs or groups, planning for a report to the class, then the language focus based on what students needed, missed, or produced. So you notice the reversal. The cheat sheet doesn't say, here is the form, like PPP. Now use it. No. The task says, here is a meaning problem. Okay? Now find the language you need. Let us put the same lesson through both matchings. The topic is giving advice. PPP version, you create a context. A friend hates their job. You present, for example, you should. If I were you, I would. Have you thought about? These are examples, these are forms. Students practice the forms. Then they role play. Or maybe give advice, conversations. TBLT version, you give groups 3 job dilemmas, for example. They must choose the best advice for each person and justify it. While they work, you listen, you monitor, you hear things like, I think he must leave, maybe better change job. You can try speak manager, for example. After the report, you board useful advice language. You reformulate sentences, you practice key chunks, and then student repeats with a new dilemma. So you are monitoring, you are noticing their mistakes, their language. Then try to advise. Notice what language would make your advice clearer, safer, or more precise. This is why the order matters so much. Learning a language is not just receiving a rule. Learning or learners need comprehensible input. Yes. But they also need to try, stretch. They have to struggle, notice gaps, get feedback, and try again. They have to make mistakes and try again. When students try to say something and cannot quite say it, the gap becomes visible to you as a teacher. So in PPP, the gap is often predictable. They need second conditional for advice. So I will teach conditional. That can be efficient. In TBLT, the gap is often revealed by the task. While doing the task, they are trying to give advice. All right, okay, but they only have direct commands. So now we have a real reason to work on softer advice language. You can upgrade their language so that can be powerful. The danger is thinking one route is automatically deeper. PPP can be thoughtful and communicative. TBLT can be shallow if it is just talk in groups. Here is a sentence that I would give to any novice teacher. PPP is not bad. Bad PPP is bad. TBLT is not magic. Bad TBLT is just chat with a worksheet. So a weak PPP lesson presents a form, over controls the practice, then pretends the final role play proves acquisition. It gives students a short-term performance and gives the teacher false confidence. A weak TBLT lesson sets a vague speaking task, lets students repeat the same errors, then ends with great discussion, everyone. Everyone is talking. Okay. That gives fluency practice, perhaps, but not necessarily language development. So we have to be very careful. The question is not what does this group need first? A clear model or a reason to need language? So here is a simple decision test. Question 1. Is the target language non-negotiable today? If the aim is articles, past perfect, relative clauses, or a set of functional exponents, PPP or guided discovery may make sense because the form is central. Question 2. The learners. The learners already have a partial language for the task? If yes, TBLT becomes more realistic. They can attempt the task, reveal gaps, receive feedback, and improve. If no, so a task-first approach may create frustration rather than useful struggle. Question 3. Is there a real outcome beyond using the target form? If students must choose rank, solve, design, plan, persuade, or report, you may have the bones of a task. If the only outcome is say the grammar, you probably have a practice activity and not a task. And you can combine the logic. Give a small amount of input, run a task, focus on language from the task, then repeat with a parallel task. That repeat is where the listen often becomes visibly stronger. All right. So now we go back to the past simple listen from the start. The problem wasn't simply that students made errors. Errors are normal. For us as teachers, errors are normal. The problem was that the lesson gave you one kind of evidence during practice and a different kind of evidence during communication. PPP helped students rehearse the form. Agree. The freer speaking stage showed whether they could choose that form while meaning something. Those are the same thing. So before you choose PPP or TBL, ask this: do my students need me to make the language clear before they speak, or do they need a task that makes the language worth learning? All right. So if you can answer that, your listen shape stops being a template and starts becoming a teaching decision. And this leads directly to the next problem. Even if you choose a task-based sequence, right, there is a trap waiting. Students can talk a lot and still not really communicate. So in the next video, we will look at what being communicative actually means, right? Why CLT gets misunderstood, and the three-part test that shows whether a speaking activity has a genuine communicative purpose. So that is the difference between students making noise in English and students using English because the task gives them an opportunity to use their language. Thank you so much, guys. See you in the next video.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.